Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Later than I planned to be. We spent some time writing an article that spent all of yesterday doing some research. I got up and wrote 3 pieces and then ate lunch and spent the rest of the day and evening doing some research for an article that I published this morning and wanted to make sure we got it right. And so wrote that this morning over at Gene's page. We're going to talk about some of the numbers that may be kind of behind the story on the show. And we're going to talk about the latest information that we have from Coach Zach Arnett. We're able to get our hands on some quotes from his appearance Monday night at the Memphis Touchdown Club. Wrote those yesterday. First, print report about that. And then he had the SEC teleconference today. And then we had a chance to meet with him in Palmero Center today, along with 4 players. So going to share with you what we know. Not a whole lot. I'll tell you what we know and what I think. I think that's really what you want to know, right? So we'll share that here on the show. I got a great classic rock top 10. You know, we've done some Van Halen, Van Hagar type stuff. Going to be in that vein today, but with a different band. Maybe you can kind of figure that out. Not an American band either. So it's not Grand Funk Railroad. But a lot to talk about. And been on the radio a good bit today. And so I'm such a creature of habit. Anytime things don't go the way I want them to, I get really uncomfortable. So I'm not really myself right now. But the fact that I'm recording this show with you guys kind of gives me a little peace to know that, hey, I'm getting this done. It just makes for a longer day. You know, that's okay. You know, I work from home. It's not like I'm cooped up in some office somewhere. Those days are behind me, and I hope they stay behind me forever, for sure. But a lot to discuss today. We'll get into the team stuff and the Arnett stuff, and then we'll, of course, get into the article stuff. We'll talk about a few other things, too, before we get ready to get out of here. You know, it's already Wednesday. It is an open date. And, again, I will record Friday's show and then hit the road for a couple days and probably going to unplug as best I can. Now, for me, obviously, I own the business, and so we have to kind of, continue to kind of stay in contact, but probably not going to produce much in the way of content this weekend. Kind of let my mind unplug a bit, take advantage of the open date. Many of you will get a chance to just kind of watch some college football. I don't know how much of that I'll get to do, but hey, we all need a break every once in a while, and you owe it to yourself. That's why you work so hard, man. I mean, that's the thing. When you work as hard as we do, sometimes you just need a minute, right? So I'm going to take a minute this weekend. I'll still probably do some social media stuff because I'm addicted to that, like all of you. And, of course, we'll check it on the message board. So if you don't see me write an article this Saturday or Sunday, don't trip. I'll be good. I'll be around. And then we'll get right back into the fray next week, of course, game week, as we get ready to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. And so, again, next week we'll record the Friday show and then hit the road to Northwest Arkansas. And get up there and prepared. 11 a.m. kick. And then we'll spend the next day and a half or so spoiling the grandkids. So hopefully you get a chance to do that yourself. The thing I've learned about grandkids, they don't stay long enough, so you've got to make the effort. But nevertheless, ready to get up there and ready to win a football game. You know, I don't think there's anything right now that can do more for Zach Arnett, for Mississippi State, and for all of us than to go beat Arkansas. This weekend, we kind of get a chance to kind of take a deep breath, kind of take an inventory of where we are, and then we'll get back into the fray next week and start ready to, prepare for the University of Arkansas Razorbacks. We've had some success in Fayetteville in recent years, and hopefully that continues. And I think that 11 a.m. kick, I think, is big for us. I mentioned that on Monday's show. At the time we finished up the show, we didn't know yet. I was rooting for 11 a.m. kick. I don't normally like 11 a.m. games, but I think it gives us a bit of a competitive advantage. A lot of people will like to stay home, much like they do here too. 11 a.m. kick, like, I'm not going. There will be some of that too, and there's a good chance Arkansas is a 2-5 football team by the time we get there. So it sets up for as well as it possibly can for us. We just got to go take care of business. At least that aspect of it. We got to take care of what Mississippi State does. Hey, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company for making this all possible. Man, I love Bulldog Burger Company. I do. I absolutely love it. There are some places that I like. You know, when I'm traveling, I say, I think I'll go in here. I like that pretty good. Then you have it once. You're like, that's good for a bit. I can eat at Bulldog Burger Company every week, and some months I do. I like going in there due to the variety of the menu. Of course, I can go get the Bulldog Burger itself, and that satisfies that great American hankering for just a great all-beef hamburger, right? That great restaurant-quality hamburger. You get hamburgers at fast food joints, but they're really just kind of facsimiles of the real thing. Sometimes you got to go put your feet under a table at a place that knows how to do a hamburger, and that's Bulldog Burger Company. Get that chocolate shake to go. Get those spring rolls as your appetizer. It's doing your part to make America beautiful. Yeah, it's true. It's in writing. It's on a menu. And you don't think that's an accident, do you? It's not. Started with us right here on this show. Trust me on this. Have the spring rolls. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. If you're in the mood for a salad, and there are some days I am, especially for lunch. You know, sometimes I'll eat big for lunch, and then I'm thinking I want to eat a little bit lighter at night. But that BLT salad, man, the portion is so substantial, you're not going to finish it. I mean, you're a daisy if you do, pardon the phrase. I like it grilled. You may like it fried. Be sure and check it out. A lot of good options for you there. No matter what you're craving, there's a good chance the Bulldog Burger Company can quench that for you. Be sure and go check them out. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Star Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, everybody wants to know what's going on with Will Rogers. We're not going to get any official word on Will, I don't suspect, until maybe 10 o'clock Saturday morning before we play Arkansas. Now, you may remember last year, we didn't know if KJ Jefferson was going to play against us in Starkville until kickoff. He even went through some of the pregame drills. He dressed out, made the trip. You know, they told us he's going to make the trip. We didn't know. Don't think that's lost on all this. But all that said, you know, there may be some gamesmanship here, but the issue here is really the health of one Will Rogers. Now, Zach Arnett was asked Monday night about it, and he goes, hey, everybody's under, evaluation kind of day to day. He was asked about on teleconference, say, hey, we're all getting better, kind of asked about it today in a roundabout way. He's very cryptic in his answers, as you would expect him to be. And I understand everybody's right to know. I don't know that anybody has a greater sense of entitlement when it comes to the right to know than me. Just kind of telling it as it is. I work really hard to get information for you all so we can publish on Gene's page and talk about it here on the show. We want to be first, but more importantly, we want to be right. And so, yes, there are sometimes I think people owe me access. We do an awful lot. Nobody covers the Bulldogs like we do. But when it comes to player injuries and player health concerns, I get it. I want to know too, but not at the detriment to the program or to the player themselves. I had somebody close to me that spoke with, Will's parents just yesterday. I said, hey, listen, all due respect, we don't want to talk about the thing with Will. We don't want to talk about it. And I respect that. I absolutely do. Known the Rogers family now, I guess, since Will was maybe a ninth grader, maybe. Wyatt Rogers came and ran offense at one of my combines there at Canton Academy. So we go back a ways. And so I have respect for that family. I've got respect for Will. We're going to respect their privacy. But if we were going to get ready to play a football game this weekend, I don't think he'd play. I don't think that's a hot take. But it's one of those things you look at and you can talk yourself into anything, right? There's so much of this you kind of talk your way through it and say, okay, it can't be as bad as they think. Because he came back out with no sling, came back out with no ice. He didn't have shoulder pads. And, of course, Arnett said, well, we thought the game was in hand. It was like a 10-point game, It was. And Zach's going to say the right things. And he shouldn't be criticized for that, right? He shouldn't be. I know people are like, well, I wish they would just tell us. Well, the longer that you can force Arkansas to prepare for 2 quarterbacks that have 2 different skill sets, the better chances you have to win. It's if we come out today and say, hey, Will Rogers is out for a month, well, then all of a sudden Arkansas has got to say, oh, well, it's going to be the right kid, so we'll go pull all the Vandy tape and we'll do this. Well, right now you're giving them 2 quarterbacks to prepare for. And so a lot of people are like, I don't understand the big deal. Okay, then just relax. It's a big deal because Will Rogers is an important part of our offense. And I know many of you have called for him to be benched, but this is what we had in mind, right? Now, if Mike Wright is forced to be the starter next Saturday, I think we're still capable of going and winning a football game. I said at the beginning of the year, if Mike Wright had to be our starter, we're still a bowl team. We're still a bowl team. And I think Mike Wright's capable of getting us some wins. How long he may have to play, we don't know. And Arnett was kind of asked about that today. It's like, hey, in the event Mike's number gets called, what are your expectations? I mean, what are you expecting him to say, But if I had to call it today, I think Mike Wright's your starter next weekend. Now, there was some comments made on the Twitter sphere that Chris Parson was out for the year, and that's not true. And Zach Arnett talked about that today on a teleconference, and Chris dressed on Saturday and went through warm-ups, and that's not to say that there hasn't been an issue. Now, I'm told he had a bit of a thumb thing, right? And but he could have played through it. But I understand that's behind him now, and that he'll be dressed and ready to go next Saturday to Arkansas. And so that's what we expect. But we want Will to get better. I mean, hey, if you had the full complement of your offense, the prognosis is much better, right? So I understand that every single day on the message boards and on social media and around the water coolers around this great state of ours, this is going to be discussed. What's going on with Will? I can tell you I have heard a little bit of everything. And I don't know what to believe other than the fact that we do expect Will to be back. When he's back is really the question. But we're not going to sit here and speculate about a young man's health. But I do believe, again, if we had to play a football game this weekend, he wouldn't play. And I do think things are certainly trending towards Mike Wright being the starter at Arkansas. And you never know how things, people are going to respond to treatment and things of that nature. So let's just let the doctors and our trainers do their job. Let the players work through whatever they need to. But whether Will Rogers is under center or in the shotgun snap at Arkansas, no matter if he takes a snap or not, Will is still an important part of this for us. Because if Will's not going to play, Will's got to do his part to help Mike, prepare mentally, work through film, things like that. Not that Mike's not capable, but when you've got a guy like Will Rogers that has accomplished as much as he has, two sets of eyes and two heads are better than one. So, again, we wish a speedy recovery, sooner rather than later. But I can tell you, I've heard from people that I trust that Will Rogers will be back this year. And so we'll see. We'll just see when that is. A lot of concern, of course, with Woody Marks. And, it seems like, Woody, because of the nature of his running style, because Woody has no aversion to contact. He is willing to take the lick and deliver the lick. And sometimes he gets a little bit banged up. That's just kind of who he is. But Woody, of course, came out of the game last week after kind of a twisting tackle, kind of twisting of the leg. And, he's been a little bit... I guess kind of, gingerly when it's come to, that ankle injury. And this, looked to me like it was kind of a twist of the knee. He's questionable for next week based on what I hear. And again, let's just call that a semi-educated guess. That doesn't mean he's not going to play. We got 2 weeks, right? We got 10 days. And so a lot can happen. And I know Woody Marks wants to play. There's no question about that. Woody wants to play. Woody wants to win. Woody wants to help this university and this football program put another win in the win column. So if he can play and he's not a danger to himself, he's going to play. But it's not always a player decision. I mean, if you've ever been a competitor, you think to yourself, even at 80%, I'm better than a lot of people at 100%. It's not always the case. But again, it's just too early at this point to make a determination on Woody. It's going to just depend. We'll go to the weekend, they'll rest, and we'll just see how he responds. The good thing is that if Woody is not 100%, we have proven that we have some depth at running back, and maybe they're not as talented as Woody, which is the reason he's the top quarterback, the top running back, right? He's RB1 for a reason. But hopefully you get Jeff Pittman back at 100%. There's no reason at this point to expect that he won't play. And then you think of Lee and Seth Davis. We should be able to run the football. And offensive line appears to be doing a much better job in run blocking these days. And you look at Ole Miss had some measure of success against Arkansas running the football. We're a completely different scheme, right? But I suspect that we will be able to run the football on those guys a little bit. LSU did as well. So, we'll see. And the mobile quarterback, right? That's the thing. You begin the element of the offense that maybe you hadn't always seen. Because all of a sudden, if Mike's going to take all the snaps, you're not going to be able to run blitz every play. So I think situationally at times we have underutilized him and kind of misused him. But if he ends up being the starter against Arkansas, I think there will be some play calling that will be designed around his skill set to kind of get things done. Now, I caution you about this too. There are a lot of people that have been clamoring for Mike. I have seen him in practice. Many of you have not. The overwhelming majority of you have not. Passing is not necessarily a strong suit. Intermediate passing game, the RPO game, absolutely. But as far as getting vertical and pushing the ball down the field, that's not really his strong point. Not to say that he can't do it from time to time, but ball placement on the deeper throws is a little bit of an iffy proposition. So a lot of people are thinking, we're going to have Mike come out here and just throw the ball. No, we're not going to air it out with Mike. Okay, that'd be like all of a sudden we're going to ask Will Rogers to run triple option, right? I mean, that's just not in his skill set. But can we fashion an offense around Mike Wright in 2 weeks? Put together a play card that works well for us? You better believe we can. We absolutely can. But, if you ask me, I think the approach that Arkansas had against Ole Miss might be the approach that I'd want to take too. I mean, like you look up at the end of the game and there's 100 plays called and it's evenly divided between the two teams. And hopefully we're the ones with the last snap taking a knee in Fayetteville. So don't be surprised if we go up there and Mike starts the game and it's more of a run-first offense, just kind of passing to keep them honest, and we work some ball control and kind of shorten the game on them. I think that's a big part of it, man. That's exactly what I would do. I mean, if you're going to go out there and try to run the air raid or the run and shoot or whatever with Mike under center, I think you're asking him to do some things that maybe he's not good at. And so what you have to do is build a game plan around what he does well, and he'll be involved in that, So I think at this point you just kind of prepare. Mike is the starter, and Arnett said it. Whether you're the starter or not, you have to prepare as you're the starter. But I think this week, especially with Will just kind of beginning to recover, from the injury last week, Mike's getting the lion's share of the snaps, and I'm sure Chris Parson, who has run the scout team, is probably getting some more time with first or second team offense. We'll see how things progress in that respect. But, this week is about, hey, let's figure out kind of what we have, who we have, and let's start putting a game plan together. And next week we get into a normal game week, and there we go. And I asked Arnett too, because, people forget, those of you that are young, because I am no longer young. I am young at heart. But back in 1991, probably the most legendary open date in the history of Mississippi State football in the modern era. It was against LSU. We had an open date. And Jackie and Sleepy and William Prince and Kenny Roberts and those guys, I guess Robert Isaac was part of that too. We put in a triple option. We had 2 weeks to do it. Jackie closed practices. Banned all visitors. And we put in a triple option. We went down to LSU and we absolutely destroyed them. And Todd Kinchin had 2 offensive pass interferences that weren't called in that game. That game was a huge blowout. There was a sympathy call, particularly LSU was just absolutely shell-shocked. And Kinchin just kind of shoves off and makes a catch, and everybody's looking around waiting for a flag, and it's almost like it was a sympathy no call. And so sometimes coaches, you can't reinvent the scheme, but you can come up with some opponent-specific pressures. You can come up with some wrinkles offensively based on what you've seen on film. I asked Arnett a little bit about that today, and he goes, you can kind of overthink that. And he goes, but, ask your guys to go in there with just 3 or 4 days of practice and do something they're not quite as familiar with is probably a recipe for disaster. That was a great answer. But that said, you better believe Zach Arnett and these guys are going to have a couple things dialed up specifically for Arkansas based on their film review. It happens week to week, right? But you can go read and watch Zach Arnett's press conference in its entirety over at genespage.com. It's free. All of our team content is free. We do some recruiting stuff, and we'll do some feature stuff. We make VIP, and you certainly want to pay for that. But everything that we do in what we call the big room, anything that everybody else in the media has access to, we're going to make that free. We're not going to make you pay for that. Now, when everybody else has it, we're just going to make it available to you and get you to come over there and hang out with us, and hopefully one day you'll be a subscriber, and you certainly should be. But you can go read that. And, of course, we got Jed Johnson today, Jaden Crumity, Jordan Mosley, got him, and Cole Smith. And so those stories will kind of filter out here in the next 48 hours. And you can go watch the videos of those interviews right now. You can go to genespage.com right now. Scroll down, feature videos, and you watch all the videos from today's media opportunity. I don't know that anybody makes that available to you. I don't think the university does. You can go watch it right now. You don't have to wait. And we're not going to chop it up either. We're not going to go cut things out. You know, you're going to get to see it as it happened. Right now. You can go right now. As soon as the show's over, go pull them up and watch them. Cool, right? But, yeah, so injuries are a part of football. We know that. Arnett did mention on the teleconference that Kyle Ferry's expected to be fine. We did get kind of rolled up on that roughing the kicker penalty, and I was told Saturday that he could have been fine, but he was just kind of pulled as a precaution. Not an official diagnosis, but somebody said it's just kind of a bruise, you know. But, yeah, he's expected to be ready to go. And, of course, he's an Arkansas native, so, you know, he wants to have the opportunity to go up there and kick the game winner in Fayetteville. And we hope he gets a chance to do just that. A lot of confidence in Kyle. But, yeah, a lot of people were concerned about that because it's like, oh, my gosh, we finally got a kicker. Not that we would be in bad shape with Nicholas Barmera, but it does appear that both of those guys will be good to go when we get to Fayetteville. And there's just a lot of people that are banged up. A lot of people have asked about Calvin Dinkins. We don't expect him back for Arkansas. It could, I guess, but, you know, he pretty serious injury he suffered earlier in the year. We do expect him back at some point this season. But I think expecting him back for Arkansas may be asking a bit much. And the thing you ask yourself, too, is, you know, you got these freshmen you can play in 4 games and still preserve the redshirt year, right? So, you know, we've got some guys, you know, Caleb Bryant's a guy that kind of comes to mind. You know, Gabe Moore is a guy that kind of comes to mind. But you got to put them out there when they're ready. You know, you can't just say, all right, here we go. Let's just hope for the best. I mean, because, you know, we got to win these games. And as we mentioned before, you know, sometimes being at 80% is better than the next guy at 100% because the guy doesn't always have experience. And, you know, when Sam Pittman and those guys at Arkansas, you know, Sam is an offensive line kind of guru. And you wouldn't have known it last week. They tried to change some things up and eventually went back to the regular offensive line. A ton of pre-snap penalties last week, you know, for Arkansas. So eager to see what they look like against Alabama. Arkansas is a beat-up football team, too. Maybe not as beat up as us, but they likely will be after they play Alabama. And eager to see how that game kind of plays out. But, guys, the injuries are part of football. And I get everywhere I go, people are like, what does this say about strength and conditioning? Guys, there is absolutely nothing you can do when you get rolled up in a pile. There's no amount of jumping jacks. There's no amount of weights. There's no amount of cardio. There's no amount of strength and nutrition or whatever. When you get rolled up on and you get a 300-pound man rolling up the backside of your Achilles and your ankle, it's going to hurt. And it may even do some damage. And there's nothing that anybody can do. Nothing. You can tape it up. You can put braces on. But sometimes people get hurt. The game of football is physical. And it's not always somebody's fault. It's just the nature of the game. Injuries are part of the game. That's part of the journey over the course of a season. The teams that have the depth to be able to absorb those injuries continue to win. Those that don't generally lose. But it's like all of a sudden something happens and we want to find some way to assign blame or motive. Well, this wouldn't have happened if this person had done their job. Sometimes that happens. You know, listen, goodness gracious, man. I mean, like when I was in high school, I lost most of my junior year because I was in a car accident. Am I going to go sue Ford? Is it Ford's fault, you know, that I didn't get to finish my junior year? And sometimes when it's cold that old ankle will let me know, right? You know how it is. It's got cold weather coming, like an old man with rheumatism, right? But it's not always somebody's fault. And one of the things, again, that I think about when it comes to this injury thing is like, when you go back and look at the bad luck that we've had on the defensive front this year, and people are like, oh, well, David Turner's regressing. Guys, David Turner, one of the best assistant coaches of my lifetime at Mississippi State as a recruiter and as a developer. You don't believe me? Ask his players. Ask his former players. And there's a reason the guys come here to play for David Turner. They don't just come here because they like cowbells. They come here because they know David Turner's a guy that can develop them and hopefully give them the opportunity to play professional football. David's a fantastic recruiter, a fantastic human being, and a fantastic coach. It's true. And, we got some guys, people, I'm not one that's ready to just, kind of castigate Jeff Phelps here. Did I think that the coaching was great on the defensive line? Probably not. But from the recruiting standpoint, who do you think signed Deontay Anderson and Gabe Moore and Caleb Bryant? That's all part of the equation too. So I give Jeff credit for getting things done. He went out and got Ty Cooper too, who was the number one rated defensive end in the state that year. Now Ty hadn't played as much as we expect him to play, but that was a very contentious recruiting battle between State and Ole Miss. It was. So, Jeff did a good job recruiting. And did we cast a wide enough net? Well, that can be argued, right? But Deontay Anderson's probably everybody's kind of favorite newcomer in many respects this year. And that's a Jeff Phelps recruiting win. Kid was an All-American in high school. And we get him up here, and you're starting to see him do some things. And so I say it because I think it's important. Let's frame it up for what it really is and not for what we think it is. Because there are a lot of things that are out there. When we're losing, and like there's all this information vacuum, people want to fill that vacuum with their own, rhetoric. And there are a lot of things out there that aren't true that people just want to be true. It's like they keep repeating them and thinking, okay, well, at some point, I'll speak this into existence. That's just not how life works. I mean, listen, I get what your life coach told you, and there's some self-affirmation you can do, but you don't control the universe with your own little feelings. If that's the case, Mississippi State would win every sporting event in every sport in my lifetime. Because that's what I want to happen. I want us to always win, don't you? But even all of that collective synergy has not changed the outcome of anything. I can't count the times that it'll be a big third down. I would say a little prayer. Come on, God, help us out here, Because, I believe those things. I think they matter. But, it's one of those things. It's just, what's true is true. And in this day and age, there's so many people, of course, we have our own interpretations of the truth, right? It's like, 2 plus 2 is 4. Well, is it really 4? Yes. Yes, it's 4. It is 4. Yeah. You can take 2 items, lay them on a table, and add 2 more, and it's going to be 4. It is. It's not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of interpretation. There are 4 items there. But yes, one of these items may have had, a chip here, and what if it's broken here? Then it's technically 5. No, it's 4. It's still 4. Still going to be 4. And so it's kind of like this deal too. It's like, well, this is what I want to be true. It's like, Steve, you put 2 down, I put 2 down. I want this to be 7. Well, you can call it 7, but it's still going to be 4. It's kind of like, so much of this is out there. And it's like, well, this is what I believe. But what you believe may be completely false. And you got to leave some room for that, right? And that's one thing that I have learned about injuries. The first report is almost always very, very half-measured and self-serving, right? Usually when they tell me, he's got to be further evaluated, that means it's bad, right? If it's not a serious issue, and I can't count how many times in the past where somebody will pop up and say, hey, this guy's out. And immediately I'll get a phone call from somebody and says, no, he's good. He's good. When I don't get the phone call that tells me he's good, or when people kind of start evading me a little bit, I know it's bad. Now, how bad remains to be seen, right? But when things are good, like say for an example, I remember when, do you remember when Bear went down in the Alabama game and they had to cart him off? Remember that? And they never missed a snap. And I remember as it happened, he's being carted off, like before the game is over, people are like, oh, Bear's done for the year. Bear wasn't done for the night. Yeah, he didn't return to the ball game, but he was fine. He was. And then the next day, I make a phone call and said, man, how bad was it with Bear? Oh, he's fine. That's just Bear being Bear, God rest his soul. But when all of a sudden people aren't out there kind of letting us know, it's always cause for concern. All right, so for today's top 10 list, as always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. Blair has made the move to Priority One Mortgage. He has moved. The website and phone number have remained the same. So if you're looking to, reach out to Blair, I don't know. Maybe you just want to give him a hell state, or maybe you need to get some serious business done as it relates to your mortgage. You're not going to call or text anybody with better expertise than Blair Chandler. Simple as that. We'll just kind of lay the gauntlet down right here, and whoever wants to pick it up, we'll fight it out. 22 years of experience in this industry. Back-to-back-to-back close ratio in the top 1% in the country. It's true. Blair's a guy that gets things done. Absolutely gets things done. Give him a call or text today at 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. Or visit him on his website at closewithblair.com. Again, that's CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR.com. Get all your mortgage questions answered, for sure. All right, today's top 10. We're going to do AC/DC this week. We did Van Halen and we did Van Hagar. We didn't do the Gary Sharon year, though. No, we didn't. I love Gary Sharon from Extreme. I do. We've done an Extreme top 10. But I thought, what? We've done AC/DC before, too, but why don't we split it up? We'll do Bon Scott years and we'll do Brian Johnson years. How about that? We won't do the Axl Rose year. We'll just do the two legends. Because AC/DC was an established band when Bon Scott died. They were already established. They were rocking all over the world. And a lot of people are like, well, I've heard Thunderstruck and you shook me all night long. Then I'm going to be honest with you. You're selling yourself short. Now, a couple songs that that didn't make the list here that I thought maybe we would throw a little honorable mention to. Problem Child. I didn't include that one. I didn't include that one. And there's one particular one, and I'll try to keep this PG-13. It's about parties and soirees. Big events. But we're not gonna call it for what it is, because it's a little bit innuendo there. But you can rest assured that I have the biggest of them all. All right, let's jump into the top 10. Top 10 AC/DC songs with Bon Scott on vocals as determined by your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. Number 10, it's Rock and Roll Damnation. I love this one because it's just pure rock and roll. Just straight ahead, 2s and 4s, in your face, good vocals. Bass line is really kind of simplistic there, but the reality of it is these are the kinds of songs that made AC/DC great. Number 9, I remember being a kid, kind of discovering these earlier albums from AC/DC. This is one of my favorite songs ever. If you want blood, you got it. That's the thing about rock and roll, man. It's like it's the voice of rebellion. I mean, it really is. That's the thing. Like nowadays, it's like I'm appreciative of everybody's art. Okay, let's make sure we get that established. But the rock band, the self-loathing rock band, feel sorry for me, oh, woe is me, that stuff is just absolutely insufferable, man. I understand there's a time and place for every bit of that. There's some times in life when you feel down and you just want to have a song that matches your mood. I get it. But, the bands that are always a little more in your face, got a little more of an edge to them, I kind of gravitate to that. Number 8, speaking of gravitating, it's Off Highway to Hell. It's Girls Got Rhythm, the Backstreet Rhythm. I mean, you got to love this song. How do you not? To me, it's like I think about the best Bon Scott songs. This one jumps in there. And the fact that this is number 8 tells you about the list to come. Absolutely love this one, man. And I love the percussion on it. It's just sonically such a great song. It's been remastered a couple times, and it's like you begin to imagine how great sonically this song would be if it had been recorded in digital quality back in its infancy. Amazing song. Girls Got Rhythm. Number 7, a bit of a blues jam here. And you know where I'm going with this one if you're a longtime AC/DC fan. This is, again, a song that was a fan favorite. They played it live, and they still play it at times on the road, but certainly on the radio. Kind of the bluesy, speakeasy sounding The Jack, number 7. You got to get that one in there. It's really unlike anything else in the catalog. Number 6, I think Bon Scott might have been into this whole, maybe he was ahead of his time, right? Because Bon Scott loved all women, right? He didn't just like the ones, Cosmo and that kind of stuff, the stick figurines. And what his thing? He just loved them all. And he wrote a song about it called A Whole Lot of Rosie. And you can do the math yourself. And so there we go. Number 5, Let There Be Rock. If you were a rock band enthusiast and you used to play the video game Rock Band, and we still do as a family sometimes. How about that? We still do it. We still do it. We still get together and we do it. Matter of fact, we upgrade equipment when you guys sell it on eBay or whatever. We just do it. We get together and we jam. We have a good time. And I guess it was Rock Band 3, maybe. And Let There Be Rock, of course, was kind of like the background song for this from AC/DC. And it's on there too. And that bass line on there is so repetitive and so fast. Great track. Let There Be Rock. Number 4. Man, you know it. You know it before I even say it because you can feel it in your bones. It's TNT. I'm Dynamite. Man, I love this one. This is one of those anthemic songs you can put it on at a concert and in between bands. And you just crank it up and the entire crowd will sing. It's amazing. Number 3. I felt guilty singing this when I was younger. I did. I sing it now, and even though it's not autobiographical, but it's a song that caused a lot of controversy, and a lot of people didn't like it because I grew up in the South, right here in the Bible Belt. You didn't talk about going to hell, and especially AC/DC celebrating going to hell. It's Highway to Hell. That's your number 3 song today. And I know there's some people right now clutching their pearls and say, Steve, how could you do it? Well, it's because of the fact I can separate reality from art. Number 2, another song that might upset some people. It's about being a hitman. We didn't include Night Prowler either. Just kind of give that out there. We didn't include Night Prowler. But number 2, it's Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. That's what it's about, And I think it's one of Bon Scott's best vocal performances of his career. And it's just the reaction to the guitar riffs on this. It's just this. It's a symphony of sound in many respects, and it was so incredibly well done, even for its time and lack of technology. Goes to show you how talented those guys were. But number 1, and you may disagree, and that's okay. I think we're perfectly okay to disagree about classic bands like AC/DC because I don't think any of us can be wrong. You could make a case for so much. When you've got a band like AC/DC, it's like, hey, this is my favorite song. Hey, cool, man. Cool. It's one of my favorites too. I could probably think of about 50 AC/DC songs as, you know what, this might be my favorite. But this is my favorite Bon Scott song. Made famous by the Great School of Rock movie with Jack Black. I've probably seen it 100 times. And they close it out with Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. What an amazing song. And thankful that Jack Black kind of reintroduced that to a new generation of fans. Because again, so many people, AC/DC from Brian Johnson. A lot of you young bucks, it's all you really know, right? But the Bon Scott years were really, really strong. Not in any way to take anything away from Brian Johnson. I really felt like AC/DC hit a new level with Brian Johnson. Of course, you also had, Z-Rock Radio. You had MTV coming around. But Bon Scott was out there blazing trails, man, a long time. before many of the bands that we know and love today. And I think it's important we give him his due. So here on the Boneyard, that's one of the things that we do. We want to keep this music alive. We want to introduce it to a new generation of fans, but also celebrate it with our own generation. And so check them out, AC/DC's Bon Scott Top 10 Songs. Roy Samanthi, my friend, will have these on Spotify for you very, very soon. And there's sometimes Roy will do 2 in a day, or he'll skip a day. And Roy's getting old. He is. I don't know that he's kind of come to grips with that, but he is getting old. And I think sometimes he has a spell, and he forgets. He's like, did I do that list? I sounded like Bill Clinton a little bit. Roy does sound a little bit like Bill Clinton when he's tired. I wonder if I did Steve's list. But he didn't. We hadn't got a duplicate list yet, but at times, it's kind of what happens. So forgive Roy in his old age. We will love him right where he is. But Roy puts these things together. You can follow Roy on Twitter, and I suggest that you do at Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC67. He's not going to be tweeting out selfies and like pictures of his breakfast and things like that. I mean, it's just that's not what we do, And you can follow me on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. If you're not following me on Twitter, what are you doing with your life? That's where all your Mississippi State news comes from. That's where we get our news these days, right? Twitter and Facebook. Let me encourage you to, pet peeve of mine, full confession. Hey guys, read the articles before you comment. And I don't just mean my articles or Gene's Page articles or anything related to Mississippi State. Let's not just fall for a catchy, pithy headline and just begin this faux outrage. Because I wrote an article recently which kind of chapped my hide a little bit, to be honest with you. I wrote an article and kind of explained, I guess it was the Joe Moorhead piece the other day, or about the 3 classes under Joe, right? And so it explains in the article how many of those guys transferred out. The very first question in one of the Facebook groups, one of the very first questions, how many transfers we have. Yeah, well, once you read the article, it could save you some keystrokes and me some time, right? But it's not just me. It's like there's people out there, it's like all of a sudden that they get you with the clickbaity headline. Like I saw a thing the other day with, John Five, who's now the new guitar player of Motley, left Rob Zombie to join Motley in place of Mick Mars. And so the headline says, John Five talks regrets of joining Motley Crue or leaving Rob Zombie, whatever it was. It's not at all what he said. But all of a sudden you go read the comments and everybody's like, oh, no. Then you read it's completely different context. The quote itself was completely different from the title. And then we're all upset. It's like, I can't believe he would say this if he regretted it. He didn't say it. Just some clickbait bandit out there got you. I guess they didn't really get you because you didn't click the link. But before we comment, let's read. We're not just writing headlines and putting a pretty picture out there for you to look at. We're trying to, facilitate information. Because when you control the mail, you control information. Some people will know the reference, others won't. But anyway, that's it for today's top 10 list, and so much more to talk about here in the show. We're going to get into a little bit in depth about the article I wrote today, kind of give you some things I didn't put in the article, some observations, some numbers, and things like that. I think it's important that we kind of take a look at where we are, because that's one of the things about life. It doesn't matter if it's sports or whatever. If you can't identify the starting point, you can't fix it. And I worked for a guy that was extremely brilliant years ago. I've worked with some really talented people in my day. And he made the comment, he said, Steve, anything that is measured improves. Anything. It's like, so you got to have a starting point. Take an inventory. This is where we are. And all of a sudden, once you identify where you are, and then where you are in connection to your peers and contemporaries, you begin to institute some best practices to improve your standing. Because how many times you say, hey, how many transfers did we have last few years? Oh, I don't know. Well, now we do. How many guys are sticking around? What's that like in relation to the rest of the Southeastern Conference? Well, now we have that information. And so now that we have it, now we can begin to fix it. Now we know exactly where we stand. Now we can begin to think, is this a recruiting miss? Is this a situation where we didn't develop a guy? Do we have too quick a gong? Do we have a disciplinary issue? There's a lot to it, but we're going to get to it after the break. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. They have been here forever and a day, serving a wonderful fan base, helping you get all the Mississippi State merchandise you need. Nobody has a collection of merch more extensive than they do. Miss Kathy Brown doing a great job buying what you need to outfit your home, your car, your RV, your pet. We've all been there before. You got big weekend plans. For some reason, it just didn't work out. Maybe life gets in the way. Maybe you want to head down to the casino. Maybe take some of their money. I like to do that. Well, MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game for you. Dive into truly realistic casino experiences featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in your hands. And the best part is you don't even have to wear pants. How cool is that? Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code Boneyard. That's promo code Boneyard to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all. Because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you'll be showered with rewards, including free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks, the more you play, the more you'll win. Play anytime, anywhere with the MyBookie Casino. Again, that's promo code Boneyard. Hey, Bulldog fans, do you like me? Do you enjoy live entertainment? Whether it be a comedy show, a play, a ball game, a concert, those events require tickets. Make shopping for tickets more convenient than ever with TickPick, the original no-fee ticket marketplace that brings you the best prices for all the events you love. And now, TickPick is partnering with Zip, so you can shop now and pay later. Zip allows you to shop at TickPick and split your payment into easy installments. Visit TickPick.com, or better yet, install the TickPick app from the App Store and use promo code ZIP20 for $20 off your very first purchase of $199 or more with Zip. Zip can only be used for U.S. purchases, and Zip may charge a fee at checkout. Certain merchant products, goods, and service restrictions may apply. See Zip's terms of service at www.zip.co/US. Loans through Zip are originated by WebBank, except for Zip-originated loans in Colorado, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Maryland. Check out with Zip at TickPick.com. Shop for all your tickets at TickPick. Check out with Zip to split those payments into easy installments. Again, check out with Zip at TickPick.com. Your fan cave, whatever it is you're looking to put Mississippi State merchandise into, could be your closet, I don't know, your wallet, whatever. She can help you with that. Visit them next time you come to town. Very easy to get to. Turn off 182 right there at the State Trooper Station. Encourage you to obey the posted speed limit signs. Use your blinker and ride towards campus, and neatly positioned just on the left-hand side before you get to campus is Campus Book Mart. If you're a commuter student, you can even park there for free. How about that? That's a cool little feature. If you can't make it to town or parking's not necessary, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. All right. Spent a lot of time working on this, and I'm going to try to slow it down and break it down for you as easily as I can. Wrote an article earlier today, but I wanted to get a little deeper inside the numbers here and kind of explain the purpose behind this. I wrote the piece about attrition's part of our depth issues, and a lot of it's because many of the players signed under Joe Moorhead are no longer here. Yeah, 55.7% of the players that we signed in the Joe Moorhead era of the four-year variety are gone. It's a lot. And those are the guys that should be your upperclassmen, right? Should be your juniors and seniors. So one of our readers at Gene Spade said, Steve, how does that compare to the rest of the SEC? So I was curious. And I thought, what if we took a bigger sample size? You may not know this, but we're about a week away from the 5-year anniversary of the opening of the NCAA transfer portal. Now, of course, a couple years into this thing, they opened up the one-time transfer exception. So you're going to see more transfers because you have immediate eligibility. So what I did is for the years 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23, I looked up everybody's signees and enrollees, subtracted out any transfers and junior college guys, and just went with the true high school and prep guys that have 4 years of eligibility, because that's really the lifeblood of your program. You use the portal to kind of supplement maybe a recruiting miss here or an injury there or a transfer out. It's kind of a Band-Aid. But by and large, the lifeblood of your program is going to be high school players. And so we totaled them up. So 2019, you had 309 players from the high school ranks signed with SEC member institutions. That's also the first year the transfer portal existed. That year we only had 4 transfers among our little group, right? So not very many, because you still had to sit a year if you transferred. In 2020, we had 290 players signed with SEC institutions. That's 19 less. That trend continued the following year with just 276 players. So you saw a nice little negative dip as it relates to high school players' opportunities within the Southeastern Conference. That's 33 less players, so about 11%. And of course, those scholarship slots were going to players in the portal. And so it's like, why would I go sign a high school guy when I can go get a guy with 2 years in a college weight room? And so as a result, you started seeing less and less high school players selected. Well, in 2022, that number was back up to 300, and this year it's 304. So we're pretty much back to where we started in the infancy of the portal. And so the conclusion that I could draw from that, and again, it's just mere speculation, is you begin to think, after 2 years into this, people realized, hey, we're straying too far away from our core recruiting philosophy. We can't just prioritize the portal. And I think about within our state, that was a big thing at Ole Miss, right? They've hit on some portal guys this year. They certainly have. I mean, to just kind of say it for what it is. And so, but this year in recruiting, you've seen them really prioritize high school recruiting. I think in many respects, you can't run a 4-year program like you can a junior college. Because like in JUCO, you're never building anything. It's all about this year's team. I just don't think that works in major college football. I think you have to have a strong nucleus of players that learn your system, they're within your culture, and they begin to grow, develop, and mature together as a group and build some real cohesion. It's a much higher level of competition. So it makes sense that you would have more guys in your system that understand your expectations, your philosophy, and schematically what you want to get things done. Not to mention the offenses and defensive systems that we run in the Southeastern Conference, a little more sophisticated than what you see in junior college. So again, I think you saw maybe a pretty big reliance on the portal for a couple of years, but I think now you're beginning to see people kind of say, let's begin to rethink this a little bit. So total number of signees over that 5-year period, and again, I may have missed one or two, was 1,479. Of course, you divide that by 14, right? And it's a little over 100 players per team. Now, not everybody hit the median number in there. Alabama signed 127 high school players during that 5-year stretch, which is the most in the Southeastern Conference. 127. Missouri signed the fewest at 85. And that's important to kind of understand there too. 85, yeah. So, of course, they worked the portal a little bit. They've had some success there too. They also are a program that relies some on junior college players. But when you look at the premier teams in this conference, you look at the Alabamas, you look at Georgias, you look at the teams that are notably high each year in recruiting rankings. Texas A&M recently had a number 1 class in the country. Those classes are largely comprised of high school players. And of course, if I can go pick the 25 that I want, you got to play with leftovers. I'm going to win, right? That's what a winning culture does for you. But when you begin to look at the fact that there's so many programs that are achieving at a high level, and they're doing it without a huge reliance on the portal. Joe Burrow may be the most famous transfer of all time. He's a backup quarterback at Ohio State, goes to LSU, wins a Heisman Trophy and a national championship. He is the exception rather than the rule. There are a lot of guys that enter the transfer portal that end up going nowhere. That's an important thing to understand too. There is no guarantee when you go in the portal that you're going to find a situation better than the one you're leaving. Now, everybody's situation is different. And there's all this talk about mental health. Well, this coach hurt my feelings, so I want to transfer out. I don't know if that's helping things or not. But again, if you look at the numbers, again, there is a quantitative conclusion we can draw here when you see the teams that are winning at a high rate regularly signing more high school players. Of course, they've already got a system in place. They already have a culture in place. And so you go out and you recruit with that in mind. And guys understand when they get here, I got to come in and put in a couple of years and earn my place. When you have some hot shots show up at a place like Mississippi State or Ole Miss or somewhere like that, South Carolina, and they don't get what they want immediately, they're just going to get in the portal. And we're seeing that happen with greater regularity. As I mentioned, in 19, we only had 4 transfers as a conference from this group of players. Of this 1,479 players that signed a scholarship and enrolled from the high school level from 19 to 23, just 4 players in 19. That number rises to 15 in 2020. In 21, it goes up to 80. It nearly doubled in 2022. And you begin to ask yourself, okay, well, what's the correlation there? Well, yes, number one, the ease and understanding of the transfer process was much greater, but also, too, NIL was approved. Now, that happened actually in 2021, July 1st. But those first few months, if you recall, nobody knew what was legal, what was going to get you in trouble. The NCAA had set some kind of guardrails around all of this, but we weren't sure how they were going to enforce it. By the time we get to 2022, you have all these collectives that have been built. So rather than having to arrange marketing opportunities for players, you had these collectives that could just write them a check, and there was no quid pro quo. The players didn't have to do anything but ask for the money. So then all of a sudden, people began to couple NIL opportunities with the recruitment of transfer portal prospects. And so again, we go from 80 to 155. Now you say, but Steve, what about the next year? Well, here the data for 2023 as far as transfer goes is incomplete, because we're going to have another transfer portal window open at the end of the season. And as it stands right now, there's 232 players from our pool of 1,479 players. Between now and December, let's just say, for an example, you start working through this here, and you know there's going to be some wholesale changes around the conference when it comes to these rosters. There's a really good chance that we're going to see upwards of 300 players. We're already at 232. And then you open up that window and you got, 6 weeks to figure this thing out? 45 days, whatever it is. So we're going to see another doubling of transfers. And that's likely going to take our total number of transfers of our 1,479 players easily north of 550, maybe even as high as 600. Let that sink in for a second. Out of nearly 1,500 players, there's a good chance that 600 of them are going to transfer away from the school that they initially signed with. As it stands right now, even without the prospects that will enter the portal in December, the SEC average for transfers is 32.86%. So 1 in 3 high school players that signed between 2019 and 2023 have transferred. 1 in 3. You can say, but Steve, that's remarkable. Well, I think it is remarkable. I think the data itself kind of lends itself to where you begin to ask yourself, is this good for college football? I understand that it's good for the individual student athlete, but is this good for college football? And I don't have the answer to that. I think that's something that we're going to figure out, maybe look back in hindsight and be able to make some real conclusions with. So you look at the average 32.86. Well, who's doing well? Well, I think, it's interesting. Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is half of the conference average, but let's be fair about that. Vanderbilt is truly the outlier here because, you don't go to Vanderbilt to play football. You may play football to help pay for your education, but you're attracted to Vanderbilt purely, more times than not, because of academic pursuits more so than athletic. And their results as a program over the last two generations reflect that. They're just over 15%. I reached out to Barton Simmons last night, who used to work for 247 Sports, that now is at Vanderbilt. And I said, hey, I'm releasing this article tomorrow, and I'm sure you already know this, but you guys have the highest high school retention rate in the Southeastern Conference. And he goes, oh, yeah, we know. We use it in recruiting all the time. Well, of course they do. What a great thing to be able to sit down with an in-home visit with mom and dad and say, hey, we've got the best high school retention rates and graduation rates in the Southeastern Conference. Guys that sign with us stay with us. They become part of our culture here. They become Vanderbilt men. They get a degree, and they go into the workforce with Vanderbilt education under their belt. That's a really big selling point. It may be one of the only selling points, but it is, because when you go to Vanderbilt, you're not going to play for anything substantial. And if you happen to make a bowl game, your team is legendary. But you don't go to Vanderbilt just to play football. You're going there for the Vandy diploma. Let's just call it for what it is. Number 2 on the list is Georgia. You say, but Steve, it makes perfect sense. Well, sure it does. 21.49%. So 4 out of 5 players or thereabouts of high school players are sticking with the Bulldogs. And you say, well, yeah, they've won back-to-back national championships. I don't think that that's necessarily the issue. Yes, that's part of the issue. Everybody wants to be a part of a winning organization. Everybody. Everybody wants to win. Nobody wants to lose. So if you go to Georgia, hey, I got a chance to get a ring and be an national champion. You know what? I might not be quite as impatient when it comes to playing time because I'm part of something special. But I think the bigger issue here is it just shows that Kirby Smart and his staff are doing a better job of evaluating and recruiting players. They have built a system there, and they have built a program that enables them to kind of pick and choose who they're going to recruit. For some of us, we sign who we can get. Georgia, by and large, is signing who they want. And then they're winning big with those kids. So you're making better evaluations. You're doing a better job recruiting. And as a result, the on-the-field results are the payoff for the great job you do on the recruiting trail. Guys aren't leaving. Now, let's look at the bottom half of this. Who are the teams that are struggling? Well, your Bulldogs are one of them. Now, the number 12 team, as it comes to transfer rating, is Auburn at 40.86%. Now, you begin to ask yourself, what's the significance of that? Well, Auburn is one of 2 teams that has made 2 coaching changes in the last 5 years. 2. Of course, Gus Malzahn leaves. They bring in Brian Harsin. It was a very difficult coaching search. They bring him in. Immediately there's issues, and he's gone in 2 years. And then they bring in Hugh Freeze. And then, of course, Coach Freeze has to kind of rehabilitate the roster and is somewhat relying on the portal. So your number of high school players are down. In fact, Auburn signed the 3rd lowest number of high school players during that 5-year stretch. Missouri had the lowest, then Ole Miss, and then Auburn. So only 93 high school players signed in 5 classes. And then you had 38 transfers. And, of course, after the coup attempt to get Brian Harsin out, right, you had players hitting the portal. It's like, hey, the culture's become toxic here. And it's one thing at Auburn they always talk about is what a good player environment they have. But things got a little bit dicey. And so they are the 12th lowest retention rate in the conference for this 5-year period. And then just beyond that is Mississippi State at 41.05%. I mean, we're talking one player, right? We had one more transferred than they did. And we signed 2 more high school players. But my point being here is that State and Auburn right there, 12 and 13 would then just, percentage points away from each other. What's the combination? What's the commonality here? Mississippi State's made 2 coaching changes in the last 5 years. Now, one was unexpected. And I guess in many respects, they're all unexpected. I mean, we didn't think in year 2 of the Joe Moorhead era we'd have to make that decision. We did. You bring in Mike Leach, you think Mike's probably here for a while, and unfortunately Mike passes away, and we bring in Arnett. So when you look at the fact that these 2 teams made the only 2 teams in the Southeastern Conference to make multiple coaching changes in 5 years, have the lowest retention rates. Now, last place is Tennessee, 41.75%. Of course, they had a ton of players that left once the NCAA investigation was announced, and Jeremy Pruitt and those guys were ousted, and it appeared that Tennessee was going to get hit with major sanctions. And so players are like, you know what, I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to ride the sinking ship down, and give Josh Heupel and that group a lot of credit. They nearly made the playoff last year, despite the fact they had so many players leave. And so you look at the 3 bottom teams, and you begin to ask yourself, what do these 3 teams have in common? They're from 3 different states, even though they kind of recruit in the same recruiting footprint. It's off-the-field issues. Coaching changes and an NCAA scandal. So there's no stability in those programs. Players are not going to stay in environments that are toxic. Players are not going to stay in environments that do not lend itself to success. And not to mention, when you change coaches, more times than not, you change offensive and or defensive philosophy. You go back and look, when Joe Moorhead was hired at Mississippi State. Well, Keaton Thompson transferred. Garrett Schrader ultimately won the job. Tommy Stevens, of course, gets injured, but so Keaton moves along. Keaton was a great fit for the Dan Mullen offense. I don't know that he was for the Joe offense. Jalen Maiden transferred. Then you begin to think about Mike Leach gets here, right? Mike Leach shows up. Garrett Schrader moves to wide receiver and ultimately transfers, and now he's a starting quarterback at Syracuse. Mike Leach passes away, and then all your air raid quarterbacks leave with the exception of your starter. People forget, for a while there, we only had 2 scholarship quarterbacks, Will Riders and Chris Parson. Then you add Mike Wright. And so when you have these dramatic changes in scheme, you're going to lose quarterbacks. When guys were picked to run a specific scheme, the scheme changes, and give Garrett Schrader and Keaton an opportunity that they came in and tried to prove that they could do the job. And for one reason or another, whether it be the player or the coach, somebody decides, this isn't a good fit, so let's move forward. And then you do that twice in 5 years. Make a major shift offensively in what you want to do, what your objectives are. You're going to lose quarterbacks. And that sets your program back. That's important to understand. And again, this isn't an opinion. This is the data speaking. And you start looking at the middle of the pack and you can say, well, Steve, Ole Miss is ahead of us. Just barely. They sent 92 high school players and had 35 transfers. They're at 38.04. They're just, percentage, a couple percent ahead of us, but, much closer to the SEC average. And what's interesting, too, and I ran the numbers here, and if I can flip back and find them, what's interesting, too, we talk about the coaching change aspect of it. There's been no coaching change at A&M, at Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, last 5 years. The only teams that can say that. And 4 of those 5 teams are performing better than the SEC average when it comes to player retention. There is a direct correlation between stability at the head coach and stability within a roster. And so those are the things that I think you begin to kind of ask yourself. We talk a lot about NIL, and certainly that's certainly a trigger for some guys to go get in the portal. Hey, I'm not getting my playing time here. Let me go see if I can go somewhere else and get some playing time and maybe make a little cash in the process. And there's some people out there that obviously lighted up on the FCS or the G5 level, and all of a sudden they became a prospect of interest. That doesn't reflect our numbers. We're talking about strictly high school recruiting. That's an important aspect of all of this. If we all believe that the lifeblood of our program is high school recruiting, then we've got to do a better job of this. Not just at Mississippi State, but throughout college football. And you begin to think to yourself, Steve, maybe this is just the world that we live in, that 1 in 3 players is going to transfer. I think by the time this year is over, it's going to be more than that. It's probably going to be 2 in 5 rather than 1 in 3. And so you begin to ask yourself, what can we do to stem the flow of the NCAA transfer portal? Well, I think part of the issue, too, is number one, you got to do a better job evaluating players. A lot of the players in Mississippi, like in Mississippi State, let's just take a look at our numbers here. Over those 5 years, we signed 95 high school players. 95. And in 2023, we signed 23, which was the high point. When you get into 19, 0 transfers among that group. In 2020, we had 2. Now, some of those guys were guys that we signed, and then when Leach got here and we began testing for narcotics regularly, some of those guys had to go. You had some rules violators, so they left. That's important to understand. And I apologize for that, but here's the thing. Everything that's measured improves. Everything. As I mentioned earlier in the show, everything that's measured improves. Now we kind of know where we are. Now we can begin to take some steps. But I think one of the things that makes you do is you got to really drill down your evaluation. You got to make sure these guys fit exactly what you need them to do and that they fit your culture. Because if not, they're going to hit the portal. I think one of the things, too, and would be interesting, and I'm sure this data exists out there. We may not be able to get our hands on it. But what's the percentage of players that transfer that leave their state? Or leave a border state, right? You understand people that, are in a border states are reasonably close to home. But what about people that leave? Because as I'm running through numbers yesterday, I noticed how many players transferred back to an in-state institution. Is that some data that you can use to kind of encourage guys to stay home? So, hey, I understand you want to get out and experience something besides your homeland, but look, and here's what the data suggests. Guys get out there, get a little homesick, and they move back closer. Why not just come be a part of it now? I think all that's very interesting. And that now that we've got a 5-year sampling size, as I mentioned, that we did the full year of 18, didn't happen. That was middle of October. I think October 15th is correct. So we're about a week away or less than a week away, something like that. Anyway, it was October of 18 when they opened the portal. And so now is a good time, I think, for us to really kind of analyze the impact it's having on our program and really our league and college football as a whole. I would be interested to know what the numbers look like around the country. And it's more than I want to bite off and chew. But I thought you guys would find it interesting. One of the things that I bring up, too, is that the only thing that kept us from being dead last, and I don't say that to with any sting in my voice, is an NCAA investigation at Tennessee. That's the only thing. And so I think you add in some recruiting misses, but I think more importantly, it's 2 coaching changes in quick succession. Major changes in offensive philosophy. And so when you begin to work through all this dynamic and you begin to think about, okay, what does the data support? And there's no recruiting class worth the program, right? Simple as that. I think let's establish that. You say, well, if we fire the coach, we're going to lose recruits. And that's true, but it's up to the new coach to either keep them in the boat or replace them with comparable talent. You can't be held hostage by a recruiting class, especially when a third of it's going to leave you anyway. I think that's the subplot in every bit of this. But I think the reality of it is you got to think long and hard about what you want to do, because the new coach, chances are, is going to have to rebuild the roster. And as this shows, when you do it 2 times quickly, you're basically basically putting yourself in a situation where you're talent deficient. You may have good frontline guys, but you don't have the depth to compete in this league. I think we're seeing it all. Look at what we've done against non-conference foes as a conference this year, right? I mean, Alabama and Texas, and I'm sure Texas maybe has some of the same issues, but, Nick Saban's not a guy that's a big advocate for NIL. And I had somebody tell me recently that when Saban may elect to hang it up because he doesn't want to compete in an NIL world. It's not, he's kind of like the rest of us in many respects. It's like, hey, we're going to offer you an opportunity to come here and get your education, potentially be a multimillionaire. And if you want to pick another team over us because they're willing to give you $10,000 and go do that, the problem with that is there's more kids willing to do that than ever before. And I think Nick Saban, in many respects, has been a very reluctant participant in NIL. I think Nick just wants to recruit kids and play his game. I don't think Nick wants to get into negotiations with players. Just my personal opinion. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Saban retire sooner rather than later. And I think NIL is a part of that. I think the transfer portal is part of it too. But I just thought you'd find that interesting. Again, some things that I wanted to go over. Some of that I touched on the article, but some a little bit deeper too. But again, I think Mississippi State, we've got to evaluate how we're doing things. And it's not just related to recruiting. I think coach retention is part of that too. And we didn't ask to make a coaching change last year. I mean, life just saw it differently. But the numbers are the numbers. And so when you begin to look at, and you can decide how important you think that is, I think player retention is exceptionally high on the tenets of success in college athletics. All right, last day for this, man. You guys got to get ready. Tomorrow, I've shared many times, guys, it's going to be one of these deals where you're going to look back and say, you know what, I wish that I would have been a part of that. Got a peach of a property. It's going to be auctioned off tomorrow. It's split into tracks. International Auction LLC is handling this auction. You can call them. Here's the local number, 256-439-1900. International Auction LLC, this great property right there off 182, minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. Guys, you could eat dinner, and before you could even take the dogs out for their bathroom break, you can be at Duty Noble Field or be at Davis Wade Stadium or Humphrey Coliseum. Your neighbor is Mississippi State because this property butts up to the North Farm. How cool is that? And the reserve, guys, for some of these properties, it's going to start at $4,000 an acre. I know you're thinking, well, Steve, that property that close to campus is out of my price range. You're wrong. You're wrong. Today was the last day to go see it. But if you want to be a part of the online auction, and you can do it from the comfort of your home, you can do it in person. You can come to 2 Sterling Drive. If that's what you want to do, you can do that. Put that in your GPS. 2 Sterling Drive, Starkville, Mississippi, Stirling, or contact the folks at International Auction, get set up to be an online bidder. Now there's, of course, a deposit that's required to bid. You get your deposit back if you're a non-winning bidder. You don't win the auction, you get your money back. They just want to make sure you're serious. We're not going to get in a situation and you win, it's like, oh, well, I'll come up with the money later. No. Not how it's going to work. I've toured this property, and again, it's so many great amenities out there. It's like you begin to look at this. You kind of wanted to have like your neighborhood in the country. You can do that, whether you're looking for an investment property or to build your primary residence out there. That Cypress Lake property is absolutely postcard quality, man. It is a beautiful place. You could shoot a calendar out there if you want to and probably sell it and make some money. Absolutely outstanding. And tomorrow's it, on the 12th. And so this is our last hurrah with the fine folks at International Auction. Of course, a lot of Bulldogs involved in this thing. I think it's important to understand opportunities like this don't come around very often. To grab some prime real estate in the city you love, just minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. What could be better than that? International Auction LLC. Again, the local number is 256-439-1900. And again, if you just want to show up and bid, you don't have to give any advance notice to me. It's 2 Sterling Drive. It's tomorrow. Make sure that you check it out, be a part of that. And any questions you had that we couldn't answer here on the show, again, 256-439-1900. All right, if you're going to be looking for something to do this weekend, your Bulldogs are playing over in Ruston against Louisiana Tech. Eager to see all the details about time and all that. We'll share that with you on Friday, and I'm sure the official Mississippi State baseball account will tweet that information out. If you live in North Louisiana and you say, you know what, I hadn't seen the Diamond Dogs in a while, I'd like to go be a part of that, you should. If we weren't going to be out of town, we would be out of town going to this, right? We wouldn't just be camped up in Starkville, kind of waiting for something to happen. We did meet with Chris Lamonis and then Stone Simmons and Dakota Jordan on Monday. And again, a lot of optimism, right? And all hope spring eternal in preseason. I think the main takeaway for me when Stone Simmons spoke is this exponential growth really throughout the staff. Now, some of the guys pitching right now, I'm not going to be here come February. We got to cut the roster down. I'm not going to project or predict who makes it and who doesn't. But I do know Stone Simmons will be one of them. But Stone spoke extensively about just Justin Parker, about the things that he did about helping guys cultivate a competitive culture. And I know that's a lot of C's. I get it. We're looking for a lot of K's this year. But he mentioned that. It's just, hey, it's about the competitiveness. And to be honest with you, I think at times we probably did some things that didn't inspire a lot of confidence. I think we tried to take a cookie-cutter approach in many respects to pitching. And we tried to make everybody be Will Bednar and Landon Sims, and they're just not. They don't have that kind of stuff or the ability. And so it's like, hey, well, this, Will Bednar was able to do this. Why can't you? Well, not everybody's a first-round talent. And so you kind of got to build a game plan around the skill set and the strengths of each individual player. The guy that continues to be mentioned is the guy that has really blossomed under Justin Parker's Colby Holcomb. And Stone Simmons mentioned that as well. So he's a completely different player. And we need him to be. We absolutely need him to be. This is a guy that's got, a pro body. He's got pro potential. And now it appears he's beginning to realize his potential. You know what Nate's got? And Lamonis says there's probably a half dozen guys in the mix to be weekend starters. We'll see that's something we'll flesh out, as we get into January. And then we'll be playing baseball in February. And he said this is probably the last year that we do fall ball as early as we do. There's a window of when you have to start. We're kind of getting it done and going to let some guys rest. And I think basically after all the changes that we've gone through, having fall baseball early may have been smart. Let's go ahead and get everybody together, figure out what we have, and we've got a few weeks before the end of the semester to kind of make some decisions about, who we're keeping, who we're not, and start defining some roles as we get into spring practice. It's an important aspect of this. I don't think there's any question. There is a lot of important decisions that we have to make. But I think it's interesting that Stone Simmons starts mentioning some of these names, guys that we were expecting to be big players, and all of a sudden they're kind of reborn under Justin Parker. And Lamonis made the comment himself. He said, we're kind of in the strike business right now, and that's what you want. How many times over the course of the last 2 years have you guys been so incredibly frustrated because we don't throw a competitive pitch on an advantage count? We get ahead 1-2, and rather than just finish a hitter, we try to get cute. And then we don't execute a pitch, or we miss a location, then it's an even count, and then next thing you know, we can't finish a hitter. We get ahead. How many times did you see it last year? We get ahead 0-2, 1-2, and end up walking somebody. It's one thing for them to hit their way on. But that was one thing that was frustrating to me last year. It's like we get into an advantage count, and then we just want to get cute, or we nibble instead of command the zone and, go up there and pitch with an edge. It's like, we're not going to get you out. We want you to get yourself out. Well, I don't think that's winning baseball. I think you got to go out there and you got to force the issue. You think Bobby Reed would have gone out there and pitched that way? You think Jeff Brantley pitched that way? No, we want to go attack hitters. And I think Justin Parker is bringing that mentality back to Mississippi State pitching. When you look back at Bednar, Landon Sims, those guys, they had an edge. They wanted to compete. They also had elite stuff. But what do you do when you don't have first-round stuff? You still got to compete. And I think one of the things that I've seen, really the last year and a half, Mississippi State baseball, is we have had guys that were scared to compete, guys that didn't trust their stuff. And maybe they just didn't trust the pitch call. Maybe they just didn't buy in philosophically with what we were trying to get them to do. I've had multiple baseball parents that have told me that there were certain pitchers, their favorite pitch was kind of taken away from them. It's like if they couldn't throw it a certain way, with a certain analytics or with certain regularity, we just said, well, we're not going to call it. We're not going to call it. And how many guys last year basically were just fastball slider? Well, that works in high school. It doesn't work in the Southeastern Conference. It just doesn't. The hitters are too good. I mean, the number one way to make hitters uncomfortable is to be able to take something off, to be able to consistently throw an off-speed pitch. And I think hearing Lamona's talk with Gerangelo, he has found command of his changeup, especially from the left-hand side. And he made comment that Hunter Hines told him that thing is deadly. So, again, I have upgraded my optimism level from cautiously optimistic to optimistic. Now, by the time the season gets here, I will have convinced myself that we're going to be a really good team. I'm just go ahead and give you full disclosure right now. But unlike many of you, I've actually been to see the team play. Now, Mike Nemeth has attended every scrimmage. Mike will not be going to Louisiana Tech, so we'll have to depend on the university release for that. So just go ahead and kind of full disclosure, we won't be there for that. Mike and him have plans this weekend, family events planned. And Dana and I will be, in Tennessee as she runs a race. So we won't have any coverage. It'll be the only fall scrimmage that we miss. But we'll be back to finish up the fall. But I spend a lot of time when I'm at ball games talking to Mike. I mean, I make my own observation. I say, Mike, what are your thoughts about this kid? What are your thoughts about this guy? I think what maybe the consensus opinion is that we're beginning to see the returning players perform at a level we haven't seen before, on the pitching side especially. I mean, what you've got, with Dakota, what you've got, with Hunter Hines, and Connor Hyzak is a guy that has really come on here as of late too. Hit a couple of big home runs over the weekend. Dakota Jordan specifically mentioned Logan Kohler as a guy defensively that has done a great job. And again, you can go watch the videos of all these press conferences for free over at Gene's page right now. You can go, as soon as the show's over, and go watch the videos and see for yourself. But he mentioned Logan Kohler. I thought that was interesting because early on I thought Kohler defensively was where you needed him to be. The bat really wasn't. As we've gotten deeper into the fall, you're beginning to see him barrel some balls up. And as I mentioned, Connor Hyzak, I think 4 dingers now. I think he's tied with Spalletta for the lead. Something like, or close. But if you start thinking about Logan Kohler and Connor Hyzak being double-digit home run guys, with what you have already returning, you begin to think about how good offensively this team could be. And yes, Ledbetter's not a part of the program anymore, so somebody's got to pick the slack up. But in conference play, Colton was pretty inconsistent at times. Kind of call it for what it is. I'm interested to see what we do with Damani Larry, Dylan Cobb, and Dave Mershon. You got some options there. Maybe Larry ends up being the right-handed DH on some days. I think you've got to have all 3 of those guys in there. But defensively, Dylan Cupp is as advertised. And I think the bat is a little bit better than people suggested to me that it was, especially here in the last couple of weeks. I've seen him have some very competitive at-bats. But as far as defense goes, as I mentioned on Monday's show, we are a completely different unit compared to what we were last year. Anything hit to the left side now, I expect it to be an out. There are occasionally something will kind of stay low and kind of sneak through the 6-hole. Occasionally somebody will pull one inside the line. But it's not like it was last year where you just had to hold your breath. Bryce Chance has done some good things. You got to find a spot for him, And so I think when you begin to work through all of this, you begin to realize what you have back and what the influx has come in, and another top 10 recruiting class. So you're beginning to stack some classes, and I think you're doing a good job kind of navigating through the MLB draft. So we'll finish this thing up, and we'll get into in the preseason camp here once we get back from the Christmas holiday break, which will be here before you know it. But I like to kind of share that with you. I've been to more fall baseball scrimmages this year than I have at any point in my life, because I think it's important to have accurate information. I also know, too, that there are going to be a lot of people that will be writing and telling you about this guy looked good in the fall that were not there. I know this. That's one of the things that I've learned too. With these national college baseball writers, that they depend on word of mouth from other people. So I wanted to go see for myself. Went to a couple of scrimmages last year. I've been to, I guess, a dozen this year. And Mike's been to all of them. But I get a sense that there is a bounce back year ahead of us. At least I certainly hope that's the case. And I feel better about it today, mainly because of the pitching side than anything else. In defense. Excuse me. All right, if you hadn't done so, go to whenthebottomfalls.com, and I'll tell you, it's going to be next month before these books are out. I mean, they're still proofing things left and right. The books themselves, all that's being printed, and they'll be bound or whatever. So books are being printed out of state. Still don't have an official release date, but I'm just going to tell you now, expect it to be November. And nothing in my control about that. And that's 2 books in a row that I've had to deal with some delays. The problem with Dogpile, of course, there was a national paper shortage. This time it's a little different deal. It's just one of those things. There's a lot to this one, and it's been a little frustrating, but it's a process. They'll get it done, but it's a few more weeks. I'm eager to hold that book in my hands too. Nobody's more eager to have that book on the shelves than me. So I want to provide you updates as I get them. Hopefully, we will have an actual release date here in the next few days. Hopefully by Friday, if not, hopefully the first part of next week. If you hadn't done so, you can pre-order that. But while you're waiting for that, you can get Flim Flam, Alpha Dog, Stark Villains, and Dogpile from the same website, whenthebottomfalls.com. All those URLs go to the same place, all one website. And then if you're looking for Stark Villains gear, and you certainly should be, get yourself a T-shirt or a hoodie. No thongs yet, but Stark Villain gear available at starkvillains.com in a variety of colors and styles. Get whatever you like. We're happy to do it, right? And if you're not a member of genespage.com, you certainly should be. The Mississippi State affiliate for 247 Sports. We'll be back on Friday, and we will record Friday in the morning because I got to get on the road. So we'll get you done Friday morning. And you guys, listen, get out and enjoy yourself this weekend. And all that honeydew stuff you put off, let's get caught up this weekend and enjoy some college football. Because the thing that I've learned, too, about the open date, I can really embrace other teams playing because I don't have a team, I don't have a game to cover, but also, too, there's not the anxiety of potentially losing, right? I know that sounds so pitiful, and I feel bad even saying that, but I do enjoy a weekend off, and we can just kind of sit around and enjoy college football for the sake of enjoying college football. And I hope that you get a chance to do that. On Friday, we'll preview the weekend, and we'll share with you anything that we've learned. But again, don't expect any definitive statements about the health of any of your players until game time against Arkansas. I think that's important to understand. The questions are going to be asked every day, but don't expect Zach Arnett or anybody officially to give you an actual declaration about anybody's health until we're ready to take the field in Fayetteville. And make plans to attend if you hadn't. Northwest Arkansas has come a long way in the last 10, 15 years. It's incredible how that area has grown up and really developed. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.